idea that you can move the golden rule is pretty amazing to me. But can you imagine what the world would be like if we would never do anything to another country that we would not have them do to us? Can you imagine how much better off we would be? That would be good. And the practical thing is we would have less enemies and we would be a lot richer. We would have a lot more wealth. In these last 10 years, we would have 8,500 Americans still alive, because when you add up both wars and if you add up the contractors, 8,500 at least Americans have died. But what about the tragedies of the 44,000 Americans who have come back that have lost limbs, who are blind and have brain injuries? And also, there's literally hundreds of thousands of veterans today that are looking for help. They have, just because of the trauma and the difficulty accepting post-traumatic stress syndrome, there are now many thousands, hundreds of thousands looking for help. And this is the result. Now, if this was a desperate struggle because we had been invaded and all of us are fighting for our freedoms, it'd be a little bit different. But we're going around the world looking for fights. We don't need that. The fights ever since World War II have not been very productive and wrong. Simple little thing in the Constitution which would have solved and prevented these problems. Like, don't go to war unless the Congress declares the war. It is very clear in the Constitution that we have a strong national defense. There's a lot of responsibility on the Congress to declare a war, as we did. Just think of how World War II, less than 4 years, we were able to fight both Japan and Germany and get it over because there was a declaration of war. They knew who the enemy was. They knew what the purpose was. We fought, we won, and we came home. Then they invented a super government. You know, we all who believe that government should be local, of course the most local important government is self-government and family government. That would be good government. Then local community government and state government, that was intended, and the founders deferred to the states. But what about this super government that came out of World War II? A super government that I don't like. Matter of fact, I've introduced a bill every year to get out of that super government called the United Nations. But shortly after World War II, our president went to war, not with a declaration. We went into Korea under the UN banner. Our current president went into Libya under a NATO agreement and a UN resolution. And guess what? What's going on in Libya? What's going on in Egypt? After $50 billion that we gave to Egypt to bribe them to be good people, $50 billion, those systems have broken down. And guess what? Al-Qaeda is coming in. Matter of fact, there are so many people in Washington so anxious to get into Syria. And yet, right now, even our own government, our own administration is saying, oh, we've got to be careful because we see that Al-Qaeda are coming into Syria. Guess where they're coming from? They're coming from Iraq. Iraq, they had no Al-Qaeda before the war. Now there's Al-Qaeda in Iraq, and they're coming over and interfering with Syria, and we're fighting on their side. It makes no sense. Non-intervention, defend this country. National security should be defended here, not this stuff all around the world. The good part is that the country's changing. They're aware of the problem more than ever before. Don't go by what you hear on the evening news, and don't by what you hear out of Washington. Washington's usually about 5 to 10 years behind the people. But we need to speed them up. We need to speed things up and send this message loud and clear. Because there is an intellectual revolution going on. It is a peaceful, hopeful, it remains remains peaceful revolution, because things are changing, attitudes are changing. And I like to think that when an idea whose time has come, armies cannot stop it. The idea of liberty has been around a lot. The best experiment with the ideas of liberty, of course, was our history. We became the wealthiest, the most prosperous country ever. And now we're the country that has the biggest debt ever. Our middle class used to be the biggest and the wealthiest. It's now shrinking, and it's also poorer than ever before. Now we have a system of government designed originally to protect the individuals and make sure the middle class would be large and prosperous. But now we have a system that protects the special interests. The monetary system, whether it's the Federal Reserve or what the Congress does. Crisis comes, we have to bail them out or there'll be a depression. So the big money goes to the people too big to fail. Not only domestically, but during this bailout a few years ago, the Federal Reserve actually turned $15 trillion, half of it to overseas entities, overseas governments and banks. And our chairman of the Federal Reserve Board has assured Europe, because our banks are intertwined with the banks of Europe, and they're in hock because they bought all this debt from Greece and Spain and Portugal and Italy, that they're under the gun. So he says, we have to help out, we have to take care of them, we don't want to have a depression. But I tell you what, the people who made all the money when the boom times were here, and they got into trouble, they deserved the depression. They should have gone bankrupt, but instead what happened, we went in and bailed them out, and now the people own that debt. So that is the reason that these special interests are now very much in control. So this all has to be reversed. But the experiment we have is something that we have to renew. And a lot of times we get criticized for saying, oh, you want to go back to the gold standard. You want to go back to the 19th century with all this individual liberty business. But you know what? What they're talking about is going back to an ancient tradition. What we have in Washington history is going back to the days of the tyrants. Tyranny has been around for thousands of years. Most of the world has always lived under tyranny. And in today's world, most of the world has lived under tyranny. That is what we have to stop. We don't need to go in that direction. The stronger a government is, the more they will take control of money. That is what they have done. And we are moving to tyranny. We have the undermining our civil liberties, the total control of the economy, the bailout of the rich, the dumping on the middle class, and dumping on the poor. So what we need to do is restore confidence in ourselves, restore an understanding about liberty. The experiment was great. It is not complex, and it's not like we have to invent something new. But we can build on what we had. We don't have to go back to a static system that we had before. There's actually a lot better ideas about monetary systems than we even had under our gold standard. So there's always an improvement. That's what we have to do. We have to advance the cause of liberty, and that is what is available to us. There's wonderful things going on in the country because I've traveled around the country and talked to a lot of people, and there's two groups of people who are coming together. There's been many who have clung to the ideas of liberty. They knew what it was like, but they became disenfranchised and disillusioned and sort of lost interest in politics, or would try to pick the lesser of two evils, and it was on and no enthusiasm. Well, right now that group is coming alive again because they remember a day, and they remember and they know their history, that a free society is much better than one that's run by tyrants. But there's also a new generation, a young generation now is coming alive because they're fascinated with this. They're fascinated with monetary policy. They're fascinated with the concept of liberty. They're fascinated and sick and tired of what we're doing overseas, and they are coming together and they are joining us in this cause to restore liberty to America. There is no reason for us to be discouraged because I think there's a lot of room for excitement, but there's still a lot of danger. There's a lot of danger out there if we do not prevail. But the opportunity is available to us to change this. We were told by one of the founders that it never takes the majority, it takes the minority, an irate, tireless minority, who are willing to go out and start brush fires of liberty in the minds of men. And that is what is happening today. And then that minority will influence and convince the majority that it is in their best interest to opt for liberty, not opting for the government taking care of us. Governments can't take care of us. They can't make us better people. They cannot protect us from ourselves. We have to understand this, the individual liberty and responsibility. What they're saying today is that we cannot continue. And this is the reason it's a tremendous opportunity. And the Spirit, as long as we have a way of communicating, and right now, the best way of communicating, and unfortunately they're already wanting to undermine that, and that is the internet. This is how we can communicate and spread the message. This message is spreading now by leaps and bounds. The numbers are growing. So what we need to do is not be discouraged, to go out and participate. We have to understand the issues, and believe me, regardless of what you think you should do, if you're well educated and you know what it is and you want to offer your services, there will be a job for you, one way or the other. It may be in politics, but it could be an election coming up, a participation in an election that could change things. So this is the reason that our participation, sometimes you say, well, we can't convert the whole world. But I'll tell you what, a crowd like this can do a lot of good. And there's all kinds of things that we can do and influence. And I see a lot of opportunities for us. And I see brightness in the future as long as we want and not dependency on government. That is what made America great.